If you're Catholic and engaged, you've probably heard by now that you are required to fulfill some type of marriage preparation. And I want to talk to you about today about requirements versus like wanting and desiring to go out and be formed for your marriage because there's a huge difference here. And the reason that marriage prep is even a thing in the Catholic Church is because marriage is a sacrament and the church is tasked with carrying on the teachings of the faith and making sure that people are prepared as they walk through the sacraments and get to receive the sacraments. And so part of the church's duty and their authority of handing on the faith is to prepare people well for sacraments. And the sacrament of marriage is no different. Actually, the sacrament of marriage is so incredibly beautiful and deep that it requires such intricate preparation for this sacrament that unfortunately we just don't see today, which we'll get into in a second. But that's kind of the why behind why it's even a requirement. It's not some thing that we take lightly at all, and that's why it requires a significant amount of preparation. Now, if we're talking about how that actually looks in the day-to-day these days, that's where it starts breaking down a little bit. So let's talk about that. So first of all, the church in her wisdom knows that it will take a lot of things, a lot of time and effort to prepare well for a sacrament like this. And so in most places, there's a minimum of a 6-month engagement. And the reason behind that is so that they can spend those 6 months preparing for their marriage in a more intentional way in preparing for the sacrament. So it's up to the diocese. So some dioceses have even more time, like 9 months. Those are the most common that I see, especially here in the States. And so it is interesting to see then that those requirements coupled with what is actually offered by the diocese for marriage prep or what is required for marriage prep. Because this is where we start to see a huge imbalance. We start to see, oh, well, there's all this time that you're required to have before you can walk down the aisle. However, the marriage prep that you're supposed to spend that time doing can really be done in a half-day retreat on a Saturday. Or maybe it's a few videos that you have to watch on your own time, and that's it. Or maybe you have to meet with a priest twice. That, if you ask me, is very imbalanced. There's this requirement of time, and yet the solution in that time is not filling the time. And I really want to talk about there's kind of these two sides of the coin when it comes to this required marriage prep. Okay, so the one side of the coin is what we've been talking about, and if it's a requirement, everyone who gets married through the church has to do it, right? We all have to do this type of marriage prep. And so you start to see it break down in terms of, oh, well, this is something that's repetitive. And so we're not pouring into each couple individually. More so, we're just giving the information. We're just giving it to them, right? And that's where we start to break down and start seeing, even within the marriage prep that's given, it being watered down. It being watered down to the point of having the teachings of our faith be more murkily, if that's a word, stated or just avoided to avoid offending the couples who are coming through marriage prep, or not able to answer the questions that they have, or not even going deep enough to where they would have questions. And so there's just like a lot missing, in my opinion, for this really strong, full marriage preparation experience that every couple deserves, because every person is made so uniquely and so individually. Yes. And so when you have a couple, you are bringing two unique people together. And therefore, your relationship is so unique and so special. And so when you have this kind of cookie cutter checklist mentality for something so big like marriage preparation, and oh, by the way, it's actually supposed to prepare your relationship for this sacrament that you're about to take, not anyone else's, that we start to see this breakdown and why people might be unhappy. Couples might be unhappy. Priests or whoever's giving it might be unhappy. There's just like a lot to be desired there. So that's not in all places. I mean, there are some marriage preps that are more individualized, right? You meet with the pastor, that's very individual, which is good if they are ready to give all that they've got for you. But that is just something to consider. Now, the other side of that requirement coin, so that's on the church side, right? Of like, okay, it's all required. So how do we kind of systematically have this spitting it out and ready for couples to receive? The other side of that requirement coin is our side. It's that psychologically, right, when you are required to do something, your buy-in is lower, right? You go maybe begrudgingly to the meetings. You open up the video at the last possible moment because it's a requirement and there's nothing really activating your behavior. There's nothing really driving you except for this needs to be checked off in order to do this thing, right? And so when you choose to do something out of the belief that you have, out of a really strong thought that is driving your decisions, you're far more likely to actually do the thing, to have better results, and for this transformation to actually happen. And another thing that happens here is that, like, the information that you do receive, you hold on to for longer. What I mean by that is, like, you go to a lecture, for example, that you are always required to go to, and you might forget everything that was ever said. Whereas if there's something a talk that you really want to go to, or a podcast from your favorite podcasters that you're really excited to listen to, you're going to remember because you have this desire. You chose to do it. You chose to press play. You chose to walk into that room rather than, oh, I was required to be here. It's different mentally. In fact, there is a study that was published in the National Library of Medicine that talks about what activates the brain. So when you have a want, that activates the parts of the brain that both activates your behavior as well as it directs your choices. So it has those two parts that kind of light up in your brain. While a need, so you could take in this context like a requirement that you have to check off, a need activates only the part of the brain that directs your choice. What that all boils down to, right? When you have a really strong belief, when you want to put the work in because you know on the other side of it is going to be your reward, right? When you know that you want to put in the work because your marriage is so worth it. That shifts from, this isn't just a need that I have to do, but that I want to do this, which then allows your brain to activate that behavior part of your brain, which is what is going to propel you to open up the portal and watch the video, or go and talk to your mentor, or seek out these answers to your questions, or to even be thinking about what comes next, which in turn allows the effects of whatever you're learning to be longer lasting and actually be transformational in your life. I like to think of like a standardized test that everyone has to take in order to like reach the next grade, say like in elementary school, right? We all had those. And I like to compare that to how someone would study for that test, which is probably very minimal, if anything. It's a test that you're required to take. There's nothing especially special about it. Yes, you would get, kind of held back, I guess, if you don't do well on it, but there's no real, intrinsic desire for you to do well on it. And I like to contrast that with someone taking the bar exam, for example. That is a very hard test, but there is a drive in that person to do well on that test. The way that they will show up for themselves and study for the bar exam versus a simple standardized test that everyone has to take is far different because there is a lot more on the line, right? It's not something you all needed to do in order to, get to the next grade where everyone has to do it. Law school is something that you choose to go into. And maybe it's because you have a dream of being a lawyer, or this is the next step on whatever journey you're taking, but it's a necessary step. And so there's that intrinsic motivation. It's a want. You want to do well on this test. It's not only a need. You don't need to do well on the test and that's it, but you want to do well. And so you're going to spend a lot more time studying for that bar exam because you have more on the line on the outcome. Does that make sense? So it's going far beyond the level of whatever is just necessary. And when you think about that in terms of, having something like marriage prep and you're looking at it in terms of just check boxes to, check off okay, did that and now I can, get married. You can look at it in terms of oh, well, gotta watch the 5 videos, but I'm never really going to talk to my fiance about them. Or, you're just thinking you're fine. You're just going through the motions of your relationship until life actually hits you and you're like, oh, wait a second. Oh, that's why we prepared, because then we knew we would know what to do. Or you're just struggling to talk about finances or intimacy or boundaries and family expectations. And so you kind of avoid it until you're in the thick of it and you cannot avoid it anymore. And so then there's arguments because you don't know how to have these productive conversations that should have been had a long time ago. And when you contrast that with someone who intentionally prepares for their marriage, which is how it was all ideally designed to be, that you start having conversations that you didn't necessarily think you needed to have, but are so beneficial and so helpful, not only for the stage of life you're in now, but also for the future, whatever is coming down the pike for you. And you also build tools and language that actually helps you handle conflict and misunderstanding and stress, actually helps you get through those times than just pushing it down because maybe that's what you've seen, or maybe that's just easier and that's what you've tended to do, right? Someone who intentionally prepares, they also are able to walk into your wedding day so confident, knowing who you are and who you're marrying and how to really love them well. And you have this idea of how to actually make it work, right? When you're not just doing this for a requirement, you are able to really flourish and transform through this process. You're doing it for the health of your marriage, not just for a requirement. And here's where this all comes down into play for you, because if you're engaged, you know that there is this requirement in marriage prep, or maybe you're not engaged yet, but you're hoping to be soon. And so you're thinking about these things. And here's why it matters for you to care about what type of marriage preparation you receive, whether or not you're bought in, because it matters the outcome. Do you want a marriage that is just taking it one day at a time and seeing what things are thrown at it, and then being very responsive and essentially applying CPR every time something happens? Or do you want to have a marriage where you are going in prepared? You have tools in your tool belt that you can pull out and administer instead of doing CPR when things get hard, where you know how to handle conflict. And so you are minimizing it or getting over it very quickly, where you're agreeing on many things because you're growing together, and where inevitably those things will kind of knock you off your rocker, but you have a plan to get back. You know how your brain works, you know how your spouse's brain works, and you know how your particular special unique relationship works. And so you can handle it together. That is so incredibly, like, that is a gift that only you can give each other. Is that being bought in to your relationship, being bought in to your future, being bought in to this preparation that you need for this to be done well. And that is a gift that you can give to each other now that will last forever, that will truly give you the most transformation of anything else. And I want to talk to you about, technically, you can check off this requirement of Pre-Cana, which is what we call it at least here in the States, of this marriage prep requirement. You can check it off without much effort. That is an option. Many, many couples do this. Technically, right? You can watch the few videos. You can fill out the little questionnaire. Maybe you attend the half-day retreat or meet with your pastor 2 times. And no one would really blame you, because that is what most people are ever offered. That is what most people do, because that is what's required. But that kind of prep, it doesn't really do much to shape your marriage. It kind of gives you a band-aid, kind of gives you like a pass to get through to the altar, but it doesn't necessarily strengthen your bond unless you allow it to, right? That's the other side of that. But it doesn't necessarily give you the clarity and the confidence and the tools that you actually need. But what if you wanted more, right? What if you were sitting here and you're like, oh my gosh, I now realize how important marriage preparation is and how important how I need to be bought in. And so you're like, what if I want something more? Like, is that all that's offered? How do I get more, right? If you don't want to just settle for the minimum requirement, I hear you. I hear you. If you want to invest in the kind of formation that leaves you saying, this changed everything for us, and I know that our marriage is going to be so strong down the road. That is why I created Dearly Beloved. You and your relationship deserves the best formation possible. It deserves the best chance at success. You know that, and I know that, and I am here to help you achieve that. Now, Dearly Beloved is not a box to check. It is not. It is a soul deep, life-giving preparation that honors what you're both about to step into, right? And it takes your individuality and your actual relationship, and we go and we prepare you and your fiance and your relationship for that marriage. It talks about real conversations, gives you practical tools. It has intellectual and emotional clarity. You're going to learn a lot, but it all makes sense in terms of where your life is going. You're not just learning random things to learn random things. It's all really intentional. You're going to get a beautifully designed workbook. You're going to have a community of other couples who are walking the same path, and you have live coaching and teaching that meets you right where you're at. Where this comes into play is your real individuality and your relationship. Most marriage prep that is required and offered by a diocese or a parish is, like I said, kind of something that's given. And it's kind of standardized in a way, in terms of, well, everyone's got to have it, and we want to have, some sort of the same thing given to them. Whereas this gives you what you really need to know. Absolutely. We're not cheapening it in any way, shape, or form. But also, you have that individual attention and time to really work through whatever's going on in your relationship. So we have this intentional coaching time where you come with your questions, where you come with your real life scenarios, where you come with things that you're dealing with, and we handle them together in real time, right when these things are coming up for you. So you're getting immediate feedback. You are able to take that feedback and adjust and come back very soon and see where you made the turn, and see the progress in that, and to see where else you can devote your time to really have your marriage flourish. You don't need another obligation, right? You need a guide, you need a plan, and you need a space where your love and your relationship can really deepen even before the vows are said. And I just want to say, dearly beloved is that place. It is that space for you and for your relationship to grow and deepen and give it the best chance at being a successful marriage. And you don't have to go searching for it. It's right here, and we're starting soon. So if that is you, if you are wanting, if you are desiring something deeper than what is out there traditionally, I want you to go and look at Dearly Beloved a little bit more. Ask me questions, send me a message, send me an email, and let me help you see if this would be the right fit for you and your relationship, so that you can both thrive and your unique relationship can really get the foundation that it needs in order to build a strong relationship on top of, where it will thrive in the seasons to come. Applications are open now. Set up a time to have an info call with me, and I am cheering for you.